to another episode of Us Anxious Folk. I am here with the lovely Stepy Kamei. Steffi is an immersive actor, a poet, and a writer, and somebody who has struggled with agoraphobia and panic attacks and has found a way through. So I'm very excited to talk to Steffi. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here talking about anxiety.
Yeah. Yes.
Woo.
Well, with that in mind, let's dive straight in. Tell me your anxiety story.
Yeah, so it has been about a 15-year journey. I first actually got my first panic attack when I was 13 years old. I didn't know what it was. It was the first day of high school, and I felt like I was gonna, I was standing up in a room during like first day of school orientation, suddenly tunnel vision, suddenly nausea, suddenly felt like I was about to pass out. And
Mm,
it passed. And now I know, oh, that was my first panic attack, but I had no idea at the time. And, nothing had really happened. And then when I was about 17 is when I started getting them regularly, like maybe once a week or something. And um, the first that I had a really bad one when I was 17 at a Costco, which
wow.
is like a big superstore, very lots of stimulation, great place to have a panic attack. And I didn't know what was wrong with me, so I was with my parents and I had them take me to the hospital because I thought I was having a heart attack. I'm
Yeah.
sure everybody listening knows that feeling. So we went to the ER and they ran a bunch of tests and were like, nope, sounds like anxiety. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. But it started to make more sense as I reflected over the following days and weeks on what happened in that Costco. I started doing my own research on it, and it became like, yeah, that was a panic attack, and that was something I dealt with the next like 13 years. I'm 30 now, but for that, pretty much the rest of my teens and 20s, it was like I would just have panic attacks, seemingly out of the blue, seemingly random, and I would just kind of shut down, or at one point, I was taking Xanax to kind of like knock me out to
Yeah.
get through it.
Mhm.
Um, and it was not as sustainable as I thought it was. But that was what I did for most of my 20s. And there was a lot of mental health struggles. There was depression, there was OCD, there was disordered eating, bipolar, there was a lot that was going on. But the panic was very regular and hard to deal with. And it really came to a head towards the end of 2019. A lot of areas of my life were not, I felt like doors were closing in every area of my life. My relationship was really unhealthy and really not good. My friendships, I was feeling disconnected from them. I was disconnected from myself. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't taking care of my health physically or mentally. My career was high stress and low reward. So my family, things weren't good with that either. Like everything was just kind of not, I felt like this constricting in my life.
Mhm.
And it really reached a head when the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
It really, everything came to a halt externally, and then internally, like it all came. And so that's when I started becoming housebound. And I didn't realize it was an anxiety response. I thought it was so tough to tell during those early days of the pandemic. Um, but I started having daily panic attacks, which had never happened before. And they would last for hours. It had never been a thing. And Xanax was no longer working. And it was just getting so bad. And about a year, I lived like
Mhm.
just housebound and suffering every night for a 3-hour panic attack. It was like from 5 to 8 p.m., like clockwork. It was really strange how that happened. For like a year that happened, and then it kind of really got to a rock bottom summer of 2021. I lost my relationship, my engagement. I was engaged, and I had to move back to my childhood home, with a family that isn't very supportive.
Mhm.
So and so it wasn't a healthy environment, and I was isolated from all my friends because they were all 6 hours away in Los Angeles, and I was back home in San Francisco. And yeah, it was just a lot. What am I trying to say? Like a lot of loss,
Mhm.
um, a loss of autonomy, a loss of my life. And my career. I'm an actor and I couldn't act anymore because I couldn't even leave my house, and I wasn't even in Los Angeles where all the acting work is. But there was also a pandemic, so there was no acting work. So it was, like everything was just gone.
Mm.
And I got very low summer of 2021, understandably.
Yeah.
And it became do or die. That's quite dramatic wording, I understand, but it did. It
Mm.
did. It became like I have to, nothing changes and nothing changes. I'm really scared to leave the house, but I have to try something. Like there's nothing left for me. There's no more rock bottom.
Mhm.
So might as well be scared productively because I'm already scared. And that's when I started. So September of 2021, a little over a year ago, that I started doing the exposure work and started doing the work. And it's been a journey, but it has been a rewarding journey, which I'm excited to talk about. There's a lot of heavy stuff I just talked about now, but I'm on the side of it. And and I'm still, going through the journey, but the worst is over, I can confidently say.
Yeah.
So here we are now.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. And gosh, there was so much with what you said that I really related to. Um, the way you said doors were closing. I think anyone who goes through agoraphobia can really relate to that, or even just, panic attacks, is that your life shutting off to you. And for those who aren't watching the video version of this episode, when Steppy said, I lived like this, you did little air quotes around lived, because it is like that. You're living, like as in you're breathing, but you're not actually participating in life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think it's important to talk about that because I speak to a lot of people who feel like maybe others who recovered didn't feel as bad as they felt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, talk us through, you said it was do or die. Talk us through sort of that mindset and um, that willingness that you had to face the scary stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. There was the willingness to like choose my hard, choose your hard. It's going to be hard staying where you are. It's going to be really hard working through the agoraphobia.
Yeah.
Choose your hard. And I suppose I was lucky in a way that everything, I say the phrase, everything was taken from me. So I just lost everything. And it was not that it was suddenly easy to suddenly start recovery, but it was a little easier because it was like I know what the alternative is. It's staying exactly where I am,
Mm-hmm.
where I have a support system, where I'm stuck in my house, I can't work. Like it just, the willingness was, it was really a leap of faith. It was walking into the unknown, walking into the darkness, walking blind. It was
Mm-hmm.
just totally putting my hands out. I'm getting a little emotional. In this dark tunnel, just going, I know what's waiting for me here, and I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
So I might as well try. And if it's bad, I can go back. But I might as well just take a little step. And I started with very, very baby steps. And I think that was the right call. Um, the early days, that willingness looked like walking out to my car, turning on the ignition and crying.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it started. That was the willingness.
Yeah.
And it was hard. But I was just willing to trust that there was a future that
Mm-hmm.
looked different, even if I couldn't conceptualize it. And it helped that there were people like you and people like Healthy Putsch and The Anxious Truth who they share share your stories, and they're so relatable. You spoke about being relatable. There's a video you put out called Life After Agoraphobia,
Mm-hmm.
and I cried in that video. I should tell you, like, thank you for putting out that video, because it was like I was like thinking, this is 99% my story. This is 99%, except I'm not in Australia. Other than that, like, this is my story.
Twins.
Um, yes, like I felt so like, oh my God, if she gets it, and other people, there's people who have struggled and recovered, and they don't sound like they're superhumans. Not that you're not special and lovely, but like it's relatable. Like this is
Yeah.
something anybody can get through. So if they could do it, why can't I? And that helped a lot too, was knowing that there were people that clearly did suffer as much as I was suffering and got through it. And if they could do it, why couldn't I? And so that's why I'm on this podcast now, because I want to be one more voice like that, because that's what really got me through.
Yeah.
Mm.
I just want to say I don't think I've ever had a guest who made me cry this early on. I
Oh,
think we're only like 10 minutes into the podcast.
here we
So
go.
thank you.
You're
Yeah, I'm
welcome.
like, ooh, this is going to be a good one. But no, I love that. I think that's so beautiful. And wow, just that getting in the car and turning the ignition and crying, it is just that, and there's a surrender there. There's that
Yes.
sense of like, okay, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. If I panic, I panic.
Yeah.
I've got nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
So,
Surrendering.
yeah. And how long I think that's a question a lot of people ask is how long is it going to take? Like, when is there an end point? Um, how long did it take for you to sort of start feeling like, when is this, that point where you're like, when is this going to get easier? And then it sort of shifts and it does get easier. When was that for you?
It kind of happened in stages and like suddenly and all at once at the same time too. There's a few points I can point out. I did notice initially within like 2 weeks, once I started really practicing surrendering, not that I was suddenly panic free at all, but that because I was willing to show up and feel things,
Mhm.
I was able to stay out longer, like with friends. I was able to keep plans. Wasn't easy, but within like 2 weeks, I was already able to go place willing, like rather than canceling all the time, I was able to actually show up,
Mhm.
have an okay time. But I was still there. I was living again. Wasn't perfect. It was messy, but I was doing it. So within like week, which is lightning fast.
Mhm.
Once again, very clearly I wasn't cured. I had a long way to go, but it was a start. Once the mindset shifts and you commit fully to healing, that's actually, I believe, the hardest part.
Mhm.
You still have work to do. Yeah, you do, but that's it. Now you're in it. Um, the next, oh, were you gonna say
No, no,
something?
go ahead.
Okay. The next point was fast forwarding a little bit, about 7 months. The biggest shift happened where at that point, it's funny how anxiety and agoraphobia, different people have different triggers, but it's kind of all like this: the fear, the fear of being trapped, the fear of not being able to run back to your safe place. For me, big triggers included being a passenger in a car because I didn't have control. I couldn't leave if I had to. Being far away from my house, my childhood house that I moved back into. And like appointments, because like I had to be there at a designated time and I couldn't just, oh, I gotta go. Like I had to commit to like being somewhere, because like what if I have to leave suddenly because of the symptoms?
Mhm.
So I bring it, and restaurants. So these are like 4 things I'm bringing up specifically because for 7 months as I was doing the work, whenever there was a plan made for me to like be a passenger in a car, for me to go somewhere, there's an appointment or a restaurant, I would always have to really plan it and calculate what tools am I going to use for this exposure, what restaurant should I pick, that's one that feels safe but challenging enough that I'm working through it effectively. And it was all very like mathematical,
Mhm.
thinking about it a lot. And there was this one day, April of this year, 2022, where I made an appointment to go view a venue for like a retirement party we're going to throw for my mom. And I made the appointment without thinking, wait, should I think about this? I just made it. And then I texted my mom and said, so you're going to pick me up at this time, and then we're going to drive down there. And it was like an hour away from my house. And I had never been in a passenger in a car for farther than like 10 minutes
Mhm.
at this. And I said, so you'll pick me up at 4:30 and we'll drive down there. We'll do the appointment. Then we'll go get dinner on the way back. Great. And as soon as I set my phone down, I went, whoa, wait, I'm going to be a passenger for an hour at an appointment. And then we're getting dinner at a restaurant at night. Wait a minute, wait a minute. And I started freaking out. I was like, I need to have a plan. I need to think about how I'm going to use my tools. And then I just stopped for a moment. And then I went, I think I'll be fine, actually. And if
Yeah.
anxiety comes, I think I'll just handle it.
Yeah.
And that was a radical day. And that was like huge. And the day went fine. I had a few moments of like, uh-oh. And I just worked through it. and it was a perfectly fine day or
Yeah.
evening. That was a big that was like really when the dominoes started falling, I suppose, or when it was when all this work that I've been doing that I was not seeing as many results as I would like suddenly came together.
Hmm.
Suddenly, but all at once, or slowly, but all at once. That was very rewarding that day. And, I feel like there was it was everything from there on out has been easier.
Hmm.
Uh, and then I would say the final, not that I'm fully completely recovered. We can get into that too. Like I still have some things I'm working through, but another point I will point out is when so something I haven't mentioned is I'm from the Bay Area, I'm from San Francisco in California. And when I was 20, I moved to Los Angeles, which is about 6 hours away. And I lived there until my panic got so bad I had to move back to San Francisco, which is not where I belong anymore. It's just not where my community is. I don't like it there, really. But I was stuck there because of agoraphobia for like 2 years. So a big goal for me, and it's very important to have a goal, I think, to kind of put, because otherwise you're not going to want to do this hard work if you don't have a very strong goal. And
Yeah.
my very strong goal was to get back to Los Angeles because I love it here. This is where my community is. This is where my people are. This is where my work is. Like I thrive here. And for 2 years, I worked my ass off with that goal in mind. But I had to be patient with myself, and I want to go in Los Angeles, but today my goal is to drive around my block. Today my goal is to drive across the Golden Gate Bridge. Today my goal is like this, and I'm all still staying in San Francisco, but that's where we are right now. And I had to be patient with myself. I had to trust the process. And about a year into doing the work, so about October of this year, another beautiful thing about this journey is that you start repairing your relationship with your intuition, right? You can start telling the difference between your intuition and your anxiety.
Yeah.
And my intuition started becoming clear and started saying, you've done the work. You can go to LA now.
Hmm.
And I was like, what? No, no, I don't think so. I still have work to do up here. And just for like a month, it was this calm, consistent, no, you're actually ready now. It's gonna be scary, but you can do it. You're ready. You're ready. And it was so calm and focused and clear that I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I was like, I get like it's not like it was as easy as me to go, cool. It wasn't as easy as me going, okay, I've packed a bag, I'm going to LA. Like it took me a month of like crying over it every day, going, there's no way. Am I really ready? Oh my God, it's gonna be so terrible. I haven't left within an hour of my safe zone in like 2 years. There's no way I can do 6 hours. And it was intense.
Hmm.
But then on Halloween of this year, I did the thing. I drove here. I drove here to LA where I am now. And
Wow.
yeah, I thought it was going to be a very slow, painful process. I thought I was gonna have to stop for after an hour. And I thought it was going to be like a month-long journey down the coast of California, which is what I told my friends I was going to do. I was like, I think it's going to be like this slow journey. And they were like, cool. Like you can like write poetry and be a beatnik down the coast. I was like, yeah, that's an adventure. I thought that's what it was going to be.
Yeah.
Instead, the first 2 hours of drive were rough. It wasn't the worst anxiety I've ever felt, but it wasn't great. It was like, oh, you're far away. Oh God. And it was. And I just had to do a lot of acceptance. Like, okay, I can panic on this highway in the middle of California. I can do that. It's okay. And when you do that is when it dissipates, right? And so I just did a lot of releasing the steam off of a kettle. It was a lot of that for like 2 hours. And I was like, okay, I guess I reached the point where I thought I was going to stop first. And my intuition was like, no, keep going.
Wow.
Keep going. And I was like, what? I was like, Griffiths, you're like, what? I was like having a conversation with myself. Are we sure? I don't know. I just have a conversation with myself. And my intuition kept saying, no, you can do another 5 hours. You got this. It's fine. And I was like, okay. And I texted my friends and I was like, hey guys, I think I'm gonna be in Los Angeles later today. And they were like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's go. Because they knew like I was planning on taking like a month. And I was like, JK, I think it's happening today. I guess. I mimic terribly while I'm there, but I don't know. And that's exactly what happened. I got in and I was okay. And
Yeah.
I've now been a month and a half and I'm hey, I'm still alive, I'm okay, and I'm doing really well, actually. I'm really
Mhm.
happy to be here. And I've just moved into a beautiful new house with this beautiful pink wall. You're watching. It's it, when a dream comes true, how do you even process it? I'm still working on it. I'm pinching myself every day that I'm here.
Yeah.
But that was the journey.
That's that's so amazing. That conversation you had with yourself and that you said I can panic right here on the highway. And I think
Mhm.
that is such a big thing because it's that, back when you're dealing with being housebound, it's that I'm not safe anywhere. Whereas when you finally understand that, I can panic anywhere and I will cope, the whole
Yes,
world opens up again. And you're like,
that's
yes.
exactly it. I think that's the biggest mindset shift is when you start realizing I can panic anywhere, and you
Yeah.
have to allow yourself that. You have to give yourself the opportunity to show yourself that, and that's the hard part. But once you do, like that was a mindset shift I started having around August, September of this year. So a little less than a year into this work is when I really started clicking for me. Like I can panic
Mhm.
15 minutes from home, 20 minutes from home, an hour from home. And that's when the changes really started happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And for you, you mentioned being a passenger in a car, and that's always been a big one for me. There were always lots of people who said, I can travel with my safe person. And I was like, I don't have a safe person. If there's a person with me, it's not okay.
Yes, me too. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that also realizing I can panic in front of anyone,
Mm,
no one's gonna, I mean, I didn't consciously think they were going to disown me or judge me or anything like that, but I just couldn't be seen freaking out in front of someone. And then now I just let myself do that.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It's really fine.
It
Like
is. It's
we get that
actually okay.
now. Yeah, it's not like everybody goes through a moment, like they start crying or they start panicking or
Yes.
what. It's just a thing. Like it's okay.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Amazing. I wanted to ask about creativity because you're
Mhm.
obviously a very creative person. Um, and I know in my experience, I found that it can be a double-edged sword. I remember my doctor saying to me, you have a very creative mind, and if you're not channeling it in the right way, then you can sort of slip into darkness. And so, how have you navigated sort of your relationship with creativity and how it relates to anxiety?
I really like that you asked this. I think I channeled it in a very positive way. I'm really glad you asked this question because I'm going to share something that I hope really inspires and gives hope. So first of all, I've written a lot of poetry about it, and that poetry has been, it's out publicly. I'm paid for it. I'm paid to write about how shitty panic attacks are. It's pretty cool.
That's great.
I won't lie. You know what I mean? It's interesting. But and another thing I did, there's a lot of I've had this discussion with others about kind of getting forced to be creative in a different way, like while you're dealing with the limitations of agoraphobia. Now, I couldn't, leave my house to act and perform live, which is what I love to do. Um, but I still wanted to perform in some way. So what I ended up doing was creating an audio drama over the phone because
Wow.
I could still perform, but in my safe zone.
Right.
It was an extremely rewarding, atypical for sure, but rewarding experience. I played the poet Sylvia Plath, who has been a huge idol inspiration for me. And it was basically you got to like interact with Sylvia Plath, and it was very personally rewarding. And it was a way I could be creative in a healthy way and navigate and kind of like feel useful in a healthy way and feel like I was engaging in my art and creativity, but in a way that was not pushing myself. Like it was something I could do at that time.
Mhm.
So I was like, so my days, I would spend my days doing exposure work out in the world, and then I'd come home in the evenings and perform this radio drama.
Wow.
Um, and it was like, I'm just really proud of myself for like doing that because it was like a very rewarding experience, and a lot of people found a lot, like people would message me afterwards, audience members saying that was so like you helped me, like somebody told me that that show helps them cope with the loss of their brother, like really profound stuff.
Yeah.
so many, and it's just like the fact that, you know, I transmuted this pain and limitation and anguish into this beautiful piece of art that helps me cope and is helping others too. And if that's not the most beautiful thing that happened this year in my life, maybe, I don't know. So it felt really great that I was able to harness my creativity in a way that's inspiring and helpful for me and others.
Mhm.
That's best. And I do hear what you're saying also about kind of your creative brain can take you down darker roads.
Yes.
And I think that, yeah, absolutely. I'm totally there. I've totally experienced that. I think as I've worked with kind of part of this work is learning to navigate intrusive thoughts,
Mhm.
accepting and allowing, and going, okay, maybe that a big one that I learned, wait, like when an intrusive thought pops up is maybe
Mhm.
that's, like that's a really good one. And I think that's, so I'm, as you asked, that made me realize, oh, I don't really deal with that as much anymore. And I'm pretty good about navigating it, but it took, it was a habit I had to build over
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
And I've done that. It's my creativity is channeling more towards happy, joyful things and less, or productive things and less scary things.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if as you said, like having that outlet, kind of transmuting that darkness,
Yes.
sounds like such a healthy way of coping with what we all inevitably have, but sometimes we don't have that way to express it and have that place to put it where it doesn't sort of fester inside of us.
Uh,
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. And I tell us more about the poetry. You said, getting paid to talk about panic attacks. Yes.
yeah.
Tell me
Uh,
more.
yeah. It's very rewarding. It's very, I think it's a thing when you're vulnerable, there's like that huge fear that people are gonna be like, oh, I don't want that. But like, even if initially the reaction is a bit, then people will lean into it actually when you're really just being authentic. It seems like a very brave thing to do, to be honest about your struggles. But when you are doing this work and you're being honest with yourself, it's not really brave, it's intuitive. Like it's
Mhm.
just natural to just be like, hey, this is something I'm going through. This is what it's like. And especially in the context of like writing about it, whether it's poetry or a show or whatever, um that's such a amazing, powerful thing we can do as artists, is to reflect people's experiences back to them, or reflect our experience, and people will resonate because
Yes.
you're I'm taught I was it was a show about my Sylvia Plath was also a show about like that what I was writing from was my own depression and my own fears, my own, and it's not that people could relate to my story specifically or Sylvia Plath's story specifically or the poems I write. It's not people can relate to the breakup of my engagement, which is what I wrote a lot of poetry about, or the agoraphobia. People may not necessarily relate to those specific life circumstances, but they can relate to feeling lost. They can
Mhm.
relate to feeling uncertain about the future. They can relate to feeling panicky in general. They can relate to feeling um, like doors are closing on them.
Yeah.
And when you kind of express the feeling, though, that's what's relatable. Even if the life experience is esoteric to you, the feelings are very universal.
Mhm.
Uh, and people will latch on to that. And it can help be very cathartic for them as well, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That authentic connection with others. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that you touched on, it feels like it would be a big thing to be brave and to be vulnerable, but actually it's quite a release and quite a natural progression from when you start opening yourself up to your own fears, that you're more than happy to open them up to everyone else as well.
Because that's something I've noticed is as I've been more open, like, hey, I struggle with anxiety and agoraphobia and travel anxiety and things. What's happening? This just happened like last night, I think. I was talking with a friend and they were like, oh, okay. And I was like, I know you don't really know about it. You don't really have to help me through it. It's okay. And he was like, yeah, yeah. And then he just like launched into like his own like personal, deep seated, like a very real
Yes.
trauma he went through.
Yeah.
And I was aware, I hope this doesn't sound selfish, I was aware, like, because I shared, he shared, this is good. Like, I
Yeah.
was scared to do that, but like, and I was worried that I was oversharing. But I didn't like, get into nitty gritty, but I was like, hey, this is a thing I'm struggling with and it's really hard. And
Mhm.
gosh, and then there was some space and then he shared and it was like, and I could handle that and we could handle it together. And that's the kind of conversations you start happening. And that's just so good for everybody. Everybody
Yes.
benefits.
Yes.
It's pretty cool to see when you're authentic, which doesn't mean it's different from when you're like, how do I say this nicely? Like desperately needing help. So you're like, and you're kind of like trauma dumping. There is a
Yeah.
difference between that versus being vulnerable
Mhm.
in a way that's like boundaried and safe for everybody, but also honest. There
Yeah.
is, it gets easier to kind of discern the difference, and
Mhm.
that's when the magic happens.
Yes. Yeah. I remember when I started blogging and making videos, and I would go to parties, early on in my recovery, and I would have these real deep conversations with everyone because it seemed like everyone wanted to come up and tell me, the dark things that they were going through. And I was like, are they just doing this because they think that I need to hear that they're struggling as well? But I realized that it was just that they felt safe to open up to me.
Yeah,
Um, and that, like you said, the world needs more of that. We need to be able to be human and see the human in each other.
desperately. That is my very strong opinion. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. So I want to ask, tell me, what does a day look like for you now in comparison to what a day looked like for you when you were, really struggling?
Well, the first thing, I might get emotional again, is that I wake up and I'm very grateful to be alive and I'm
Mhm.
very happy and I'm very excited about whatever the day. I'm very much, I have hope and I'm looking forward to the day. That's kind of like the most significant, I think. When I was struggling, it was, damn it, I woke up, to be very frank with you.
Yeah.
Or it was just white knuckling. Oh God, another day of white knuckling. Big difference there, just
Hmm.
from the um a typical day. Now I did just like move into a new place, so there's a lot of, I don't quite have a routine down, but generally speaking, as I've been healthier these past few months, I do some conscious breathing and meditation in bed right away within a few minutes of waking up. It's very important, I think, to start the day off that way. I eat generally much healthier, I think, just wholesome whole foods, I think that's just very important, nourishing your body. I do yoga every day. And this is actually how we got connected, is you released a video about yin yoga and I was like, yes,
Oh,
life changing. So
yeah,
that's why
the
I was
best.
like, hey, love your video, by the way.
Yeah.
um, yeah, yoga really connected me to my body again when I was so scared to be in my body because of panic and trauma and all that stuff.
Yes.
Yoga, especially in yoga and yoga nidra,
Hmm.
which is body scan meditation, these practices were really vital, and I've kept up with these practices. They're daily, they're non-negotiable. I mean, like, sometimes I can only do a few minutes like before bed if I've had a busy day, but like I still make time for it. I make time for my health is really a big one. I make time for my mental and physical and emotional well-being. I meditate at least once a day. I do yoga at least once a day or some sort of movement. Um, my life doesn't consist of making plans and then going, okay, well, how am I going to navigate this? Because I'm going to have this fear is going to show up. That's just not, it's not a thing anymore. Very rarely anyway. It's usually like, yeah, I'll meet you out for dinner at 5:30 at this restaurant. And that's just it.
Hmm.
It's not like there's not so much planning, so much like anticipatory anxiety. Like that's just not a thing anymore. I can
Hmm.
just go and do things. Um, because I repaired my relationship with my body, with my brain, with my anxiety, and I trust it now. Like if anxiety pops up, it's for a reason, and I'll ask like, what's going on,
Hmm.
you know? As opposed to when I was struggling, when everything was just, I was just thinking constantly. Everything had to be thought about and prepared for, and dreaded. God, it's exhausting just thinking about. So Matt, pretty big difference, and just a lot more acceptance. Like the reason why I'm able to wake up and feel like, okay, whatever the day brings, I'm ready, is because I know I can handle it, which is a really powerful feeling. And that's one of the, I think, the best gifts you get on the other side of agoraphobia recovery or panic disorder recovery, is you're like, I am freaking Superman or Superwoman or super whatever gender. I can do, I am capable. I am capable. So That's a really powerful gift you get at the end of it.
Yeah.
And that's how I move through my days. Like whatever happens, good, bad, and different, I will attach me. I can choose what meaning I attach to it. And I can handle it. Like
Hmm.
I know what to do. Or if I don't know what to do, I know how to slow down until I figure out what I should do. Yeah, it's all great. It's just when you have that trust in your, I think it's a lot of it is rebuilding trust with yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. And when you have that, oh my God, you're unstoppable. You're
Yeah.
so unstoppable. That's
100%.
mhm.
I I think it's important to add to that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you mentioned, meditation, conscious breathing, yoga, all those being non-negotiables, healthy eating as well. Or nourishing eating, I should say. Like, what is healthy,
Yeah,
really?
yeah. That's what I meant too.
Yeah.
Nourishing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think there are some people who are, I know, I'm just going to speak for myself. Back in the day when I was housebound, I would have heard that. And first, I would have thought that's a lot of work. And secondly, I would have related it to um, all these things you have to do in order to stop feeling anxious. Like, are these just things you're doing to keep the anxiety at bay? Whereas I think it comes from a place of really loving your body and wanting to be in your body, right?
Yes. Yes, I'm really, really glad you wanted to circle back to that because it's not about what, like, if I do yoga, the symptoms will go away. Like, that's not the point.
Hmm.
None of this is about getting rid of. It's working with and being with yourself and
Yes.
because or exercise or hiking is another thing I love to do. These kinds of practices, whatever one works for you, the point isn't so much, it doesn't have to be yoga or meditation or hiking or whatever. It's a practice where you're nourishing yourself, and
Hmm.
it's a practice where you're honoring yourself, and it's a practice where you're with yourself, whatever, like a healthy practice. That's what it's really about. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Love it.
More than a, yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. So this brings me to my last question. If you could have any piece of advice for someone who is struggling, what would that advice be?
Oh, I want to give a big hug to start. That's not my answer. Uh, I get it. I get it. I probably look right in the camera. I get it. Um, I think I know it's so hard, but really meet yourself where you're at. You are struggling right now, and it's not because you're weak. It's because this is really hard. It is really hard. I'm going to validate that. Like it, we're going to start with validation. Like it is hard. You're doing a hard thing. It sucks and it's very unfair. It does suck. It is very unfair. It's really hard.
Mm.
And you can accept that. Once you accept that, like, you know what? I used to be somebody who was a world traveler and now I can't even go to the grocery store for milk. That feels bad, but that's the reality right now. See, right now, temporarily, that's where you are. So you meet yourself where you're at. And what can you do? You can practice going to the grocery store for milk. Even if your ultimate goal is to go to Thailand and Singapore one day. I'm talking about myself. For
Love
right now,
it.
today, you're going to the grocery store for milk. That's what you're doing. And this is where you are right now. And you might surprise yourself with how much purpose you feel and how good that feels that you are solving this problem and being effective and changing the foundation of your life, and you're starting to see results, and it just starts piggybacking on itself just from those small steps. So I feel like I was a little long-winded here. Basically, meet yourself where you're at, baby steps. Seriously, start with, I think that's a big piece of advice, like start with baby steps. I was trying to make 6-hour drives back to LA. It wasn't working. 30 minutes in the drive, I was panicking. So I had to start with sitting in my car, turning on the ignition and crying.
Hmm.
And now look where I am. So that's how it goes. Meet yourself where you're at, baby steps, validate what you're struggling with, because it's freaking hard, man. It is. It is.
Yeah.
That's something I was telling myself. Like I would beat myself up so much. It's like this shouldn't be that big of a deal. when I was 25, I backpacked down the coast of Japan. Now I can't even get in my car. It's like, yeah, right. You know what? Something happened and you can't. That's okay. Like, it is a hard thing. Everybody's entitled to a bad time in life, and this is your time,
Mhm.
which is okay. Like, and it's temporary because you're doing the thing to get better. So it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I, yes, got tears, got tears as usual. But I do want to ask you just before we go, you mentioned Thailand and Singapore. What is next for you?
Yeah. I mean, really at this point, it's traveling outside of California, which is something I've done pre-agoraphobia and something I'm really looking forward to. I have a lot of opportunities. It's funny you asked this. I have kind of an open invitation to go to Arizona, which is one state over, and I haven't, so I'm having anxiety about it. It's an open invitation, which is nice. That relieves some pressure, but that's a goal I would like to meet within the next few months.
Hmm.
I'll happily update you when that happens. And then from there, a couple friends and I bought tickets for a Broadway play in New York City. So I got to get on a plane in July
Yeah.
because I was missing that because I'm seeing Back to the Future the musical. It's happening. So I'm not missing that because of
That's
agoraphobia.
that's a worthy cause.
It's a very worthy cause. So New York's amazing. So that I have a friend in Seattle who's having a baby soon. I want to go visit her and the baby. And so in terms of like kind of like those big goals, it's like those big travel goals, right?
Yeah.
Other than that, continue to transmute this experience into art. Yep, doing that. And whether it's through writing or through a show, to be determined, but it's going to be something. And helping people, like doing doing interviews or doing my own video. Like I don't know quite yet, but I'd want to put the ladder down for people, the way other people did for me. So
Yeah.
it's very abundant and it's a very rich, hopeful future. After so long of not having darkness in the future, it feels pretty great.
Amazing. This world is lucky to have you willing to throw yourself into it and share. And I'm very grateful that you spent the time with me today and shared your story. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. You help me. You help me a lot. I know you're helping a lot of people. So I'd like to think I speak for everyone listening when I say thank you. That video, Life After Agoraphobia, look it up. I
Thank
watched the,
you.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for thanking
Yeah.
me.
So if people would like to get in touch with you, because holy moly, you're such a bright spark and like your energy is just so relieving and nice.
Oh, thank
how,
you.
welcome. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, yeah, Instagram is a good one. I am at Some Laughing Ghosts. I'm
Mhm.
sure you'll put it in the show notes. It's
Yep.
word Some Laughing Ghosts. Please follow me there, slide into my DMs. Happy to chat about. I really am. That's probably the best place to find me at this point. Yeah,
Awesome. Thank you, Stepy Kamei.
thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Us Anxious Folk podcast, the podcast for the chronically overwhelmed, perpetually panicked, anxious folk in all of us. If you would like to find more about me, you can find me on YouTube at Lauren Rose or on Instagram at Lauren R_Rose.